Mate, this is massive. I never thought we'd get this kind of reach.
What do you mean?
It's fucking Stormzy.
Everywhere you look, there's some jacked up guards locking us up, murdering us, and if they can't do that, then they just take what they want from us. They make us poor, and then they beat us down to nothing so that we can't resist. And do you know what? None of this is new. The powers that be, they've always been trying to keep us down. Same shit, different day. But me, I'm the one thing they fear most. I'm a black man with money.
Big Mac, I was making all of the noise in the big bird jacket, that's the food for your boy. They rate me, that's the
Watch Dogs Legion takes place within a fictionalized post-Brexit London, where a giant surveillance state reigns supreme after a series of terrorist bombings blew up major parts of the iconic city. The acts, however, were perpetrated not by Muslim extremists, who are completely non-existent in the game, but rather by a homegrown rogue hacker group called Zero Day, who frames the attacks on the virtuous Antifa-esque protagonists of DedSec, who are portrayed as anti-capitalist hacktivists. In the aftermath of the bombings, a private paramilitary firm called Albion, led by one Nigel Cass, gets a lucrative government mandate to take over the responsibilities of the Metropolitan Police Service. For most of the game, Albion is the arch enemy the player must fight to depose.
Albion have been experimenting with behavior modification through electroshock, hypnosis, and drugs.
What stands out here is that Albion is an alternative name for the British Isles and its people. So, essentially, the game is pitting the player against the British people, who, in order to save themselves, must destroy themselves, apparently.
Albion stomping all over this city is the real sticky situation now.
I couldn't agree more. That's why I contacted you. Albion haven't simply shut down the government, they've sullied the Palace of Westminster, the Great Bell, with their propaganda.
Ubisoft insinuates that irrational fear of terrorism encouraged Brits to give up all their rights, and now they live under fascism, or so they endlessly assert.
No fascist thugs in Britain! You fascist!
One of the kind of classic hallmarks of a fascist leader is having their own private army.
Welcome to fascist London.
Ubisoft has essentially created one giant anti-Brexit fear-mongering tirade about what will happen if Brits reject globalism, close their borders, and deport migrants who hate and want to replace the British people. In a disturbing display of inversion, Watch Dogs blames almost every symptom of the globalist disease choking the British people on nationalist sentiments.
Make no mistake, London is under occupation. Armed mercenaries patrol our streets, allegedly to keep people safe, but really they're keeping the people scared.
No shit. Albion stays in power if everyone's scared of being rounded up, or fucking shot.
So, we have to ignite the will to resist in the people of London by showing them that Albion aren't the solution, they're the problem.
Listening to the in-game radio stations reveals that despite Britain apparently being able to produce its own self-driving cars, hologram outfits, and optic headsets for the entire population, they now suffer food shortages after closing their borders.
And the trouble with the UK was, we don't produce our own food. We never have. For hundreds of years, we produced under half of our own food. So as soon as those walls went up, we started having significant material problems in the country.
Nigel Cass is a bizarrely warped caricature of Nigel Farage. Unlike Farage, however, Cass's father was murdered in what he calls the random event.
Mr. Cass experienced a deeply traumatic event when he witnessed the murder of his father, Gareth Cass, CEO of Albion. He began exhibiting symptoms soon after what he frequently described as the random event. Mr. Cass's initial symptoms included insomnia, paranoia, distorted blame, and recurring flashbacks. However, he appears to have channeled his anger and self-described powerlessness into his work to ensure that Albion become, quote, a mechanism for preventing unpredictable violence. It seems somewhat of a mania, edging on psychosis. For me, this raises concerns about Mr. Cass's fitness to run a multinational security company.
The in-game psych profile of Cass suggests that he is irrationally concerned with random crime, which Ubisoft seems to insinuate is just part and parcel of life in a big city. Now, while the monologue does not directly quote Sadiq Khan, his sentiments were certainly conveyed. What's more, Ubisoft depicts a galaxy-brained black man as having created the sophisticated drone system for Albion. Nigel Cass then tricks him into doing his evil deeds, and now it's up to you to stop Nigel from abusing a POC's achievements.
Born in London, Bilardi was a recipient of the Cass Foundation Technical Scholarship at 14, which included a mentorship with Cass himself. At 16, Bilardi designed Cass's first drone fleet. Fun fact, Cass delayed the launch by a week so it would land on Bilardi's birthday.
Cass sounds like Balaji's second dad. Why would he help us?
They had a falling out after an incident in the Niger Delta 3 years ago. A buried human rights investigation accuses Cass of ordering a drone fleet to wipe out a village protesting the construction of a pipeline, but the drones malfunctioned before they could. Bilardi is named as the likely saboteur. He's been on the run ever since, but now tracking data shows he's reappeared in London.
Shit, he's looking for redemption like with the protesters. This guy designed Cass's drone fleet. I think he's trying to disarm Albion.
While the game asserts that Brits concerned about terrorism have lost their grasp on reality, Ubisoft invented a series of deportation centers in post-Brexit London wherein Windrush Jamaicans are kidnapped and their organs harvested on the black market by a British gang run by an actual British woman who also enslaves immigrants with microchip technology.
The European Processing Centre is the Albion angle. Since the bombings, they can grab anyone off the street. Call them illegal immigrants, potential DedSec insurgents, whatever. Though we know who the real danger is.
The European Processing Centre. It processes deportees by stacking them up in squalid conditions and forgetting about them. But hey, it's to protect London, right?
This place is worse than a prison camp. Every day I see people come through here, torn from their homes and their families. But I'd rather stay and keep an eye on things. Maybe help out once in a while. Like, no.
Fuck. This is nightmare place. The government is okay with the immigrants treated like this? Someone could go missing here and no one would notice in a million years.
Yeah, well, people have been disappearing.
There's no doubt about it. This whole operation is meant to harvest organs. Clan Kelly's chopping off the parts they want and burning the leftovers.
You made me a slave. All of us. Please, let me go. Take this thing out.
Back to your old life. Back to nothing. Back to you 2.5 screaming blighters in your dead-end job and sucking off the dole.
The absurd insinuation Ubisoft is making is that if British xenophobes get their way and the British people are allowed to remain a distinct nation, then brown people will be exploited. On top of this, in another complete inversion of reality, the game asserts that gangs of England First patriots are wandering the streets, beating up poor innocent migrants.
An old friend of mine got jumped the other night. I want to go visit him, but, well, you know.
Nah, that's messed up, man.
Yeah, it was a pack of fuckers from EPAF. They knew my mate ain't from here. They kept yelling, England first, as they kicked the shit out of him.
How can we help?
I don't know.
Fuck! My days!
It's a classic paradox. The shittier a society gets, the less willing everyone is to share it. There's been a spike in anti-immigrant violence lately, perpetrated by organised groups like the EPAF.
That's fucked, blood. What can we do?
The EPAF, or English Patriotic Action Front, appears to be unusually well funded and organised. They could be connected to some larger criminal enterprise.
Alright, let's check that shit out.
This is Kennington Park. Local news reports indicate it's been occupied by a group of violent xenophobes calling themselves the English Patriotic Action Front. It seems the EPAF answers to someone calling themselves Kingfisher, who is pushing them to attack immigrants.
Interesting. What else you got?
The laptop's GPS indicates a location where Kingfisher regularly meets with at least one EPAF member. I doubt they go there to swap football stickers or pick each other's hooves.
I think we'll find some good shit there.
Pushing the coordinates now.
Why do we have to meet in a police station? Makes me feel edgy.
It's good cover. If anyone sees you, they'll assume the old Bill picked you up.
Just weird to be sitting here without the old bracelets is all. So what have you got for us?
Names. It's a list of people in this neighborhood that Filament tells us will be prone to violence if provoked.
You want us to start some fights?
The bloodier the better. We want some nice, scary ultra-violence for Gran and Grandad on the evening news.
Now, make no mistake, this is Ubisoft attacking Britain First groups like Patriotic Alternative, run by Mark Collett and Laura Taller, who, ironically, was herself recently assaulted by Antifa thugs. Moving on though, an in-game radio station had the audacity to compare the quote-unquote fascist takeover of Britain to a homeopathic dilution of British identity.
Do we actually own anything as a country now? Is there anything we haven't flogged off for profit? Oh, I think we've basically just become a homeopathic Britain. Diluted and diluted until there's barely a trace of the original Britain left. But some quackish lunatics insist it actually works better that way. It's total bullshit. Is there anything left?
Analogizing the in-game political situation to homeopathic dilution is quite bizarre. Who or what is the disease? Or rather, what is the substance causing the disease? And what exactly is being diluted by the homeopathic process being referenced? Whatever the case, Ubisoft certainly isn't alluding to the idea that ethnic British identity is being diluted with migrants.
So, yes lads, we're winning.
If anything, they're saying that Britain has always been diverse, and diversity is part and parcel of British identity. And deporting immigrants, maintaining borders, and every other traditionalist notion are in fact the culprit, diluting the very British identity that fearful Brits want to preserve.
Fascist pricks.
Again, it's a complete inversion of reality, wherein any defense mechanism to survive as a distinct people is pathologized, while the disease causing their body to rot is depicted as their salvation. Still, this framing was all a bit strange, because despite Ubisoft's post-Brexit fascist totalitarian Fourth Reich dictatorship, half the population of London is black, and minorities are equally represented everywhere, including Albion. In this sense, Ubisoft's post-Brexit society is just like the one in real life, where non-Brits just keep pouring into the country despite the UK having left the European Union. And just like in real life, none of the social justice warriors have any idea that the elites in every major capitalist corporation is actually on their side.
And in the fight against systematic racism and inequality, Doritos is committing to amplifying black voices, so you can clearly hear us now.
And it's simply too amusing not to mention here that if you happen to shoot the protesters demanding the removal of the super evil paramilitary force oppressing the population, the super evil paramilitary force oppressing the population responds within seconds.
All units, possible suspect or suspects reported near your location.
Move into the hostile's location.
Welcome to Fascist London.
Now, the curious thing about how the game constantly complains about and misrepresents fascism, which is portrayed as a vague brand of nefarious pro-capitalist authoritarianism, is that protesters themselves demand an authoritarian governmental action on their behalf against corporations who've taken their jobs.
Where's our jobs? You giant knobs.
Now, NPCs are rightly upset about increased cost of living and job losses, but curiously, they all assert that mass migration has had zero effect on anything. In fact, the in-game protesters just endlessly demand better housing, better healthcare, and better jobs from the government.
Where's my job? Where's my job?
Shelter is a basic human right. Fair wages for hard work.
We need better housing.
In real life, as media talking heads dream of turning rural Scotland into a giant apartment complex to accommodate increasing waves of migrants, the writers at Ubisoft assert that housing costs too much in Britain, not because of increased demand, but because of corporate tax fraud.
I don't think I need to tell you that the housing in London's gone mental. Thousands of people living on the street, while perfectly good houses doing nothing but providing cover to criminals, hiding their loot from taxes.
You talk a big game. You got any proof?
Nothing that could put anyone behind bars. That's where you come in. Investigate some of these shell houses, expose the tax fraud, take the power back.
The only saving grace here is that the criminal in question happens to be a Haitian. As to why they portray a Haitian in a poor light, well, probably so some Civnat consumer can still cling to the idea that video games aren't paused. Speaking of which, Ubisoft furthers the idea that the elites are using fear of immigrants and terrorism to divide the nation so that they can maintain their rule.
Immigrants built this city. Politicians will fight our neighbor. They told us refugees left the city. Why? Where's the proof? They needed a scapegoat so they could bring Albion here. And now what? Your neighbors, your co-workers, your friends are being dragged out of their homes. Families are being torn apart. If they can make us hate each other, they can take away more of our rights and dignities. It's immigrants today, but it's you tomorrow. Don't think
have reason to believe a former DedSec operative may still be alive but missing inside the EPC.
Angel Lopez, not London-born, but I won't hold that against him, unlike some others.
Looks like Angel got caught up in the immigration roundup, which, ironically, may be the only reason he escaped 0 days DedSec purge.
Anti-immigrant sentiment has grown in London since the bombings. Albion fuels it. It allows them to send anyone they want to their brutal refugee camp.
Now, of course, automation will affect job losses for locals regardless of immigration, but Ubisoft's assertion that the latter has no effect on increased housing costs or job losses is absurd, although perhaps not surprising considering how much the gaming industry itself profits off foreign labor markets. Most AAA developers outsource huge swaths of their workload to studios like Virtuos in countries like China, where the labor costs much less.
Where's my job? Where's my job?
Moving on, the game actually demonizes a drop in crime because it was achieved via fascism.
But still, violent crime, a record low, although I imagine that probably depends exactly how you count it. If you include violent crime committed by the state, either themselves or via Albion, their chosen violent crime contractors who provide such a very valuable bargain service of beating people up, well, it's probably not quite as low as the figures suggest.
I don't know. I think they're probably right. Who has the opportunity to commit violent crime these days anyway? The moment you pick up a fruit knife, you get tasered by a robot policeman and deported for looking Bulgarian. It's a much more peaceful society. It's just much less of a society.
This talking head is basically saying that unless you accept gruesome acts of terrorism and grooming gangs as part and parcel of British life, well, society won't be much of a society. Sure, that's not exactly how she frames it, but her commentary is meant to humorously downplay and trivialize the role of immigration-related phenomena in the destruction of British society. The grand irony, however, is that the need for actual authoritarianism increases in Britain commensurately with the influx of immigrants and globalist policies. A homogenous British society is one of low crime, high trust, and one in which democracy can thrive. It's also one where the police don't need to be militarized. Speaking of crime, a central mechanic of the game is that the player can recruit almost any NPC off the street, and many are self-admitted criminals.
Are you ready to take back London?
Ah, DedSec then. Good. Just so happens we need a few heavies to back me up on something. This gangster fuck stabbed me in the back, and I want your help returning the favour. The more literally, the better.
Sorry, we're not murderers for hire.
Kingfisher is down. That should make it harder for those xenophobic goons to get their intolerant hands on military weaponry at the very least.
Fine. Lots of ways to make a man suffer. I'm a car thief.
DedSec has virtually no background checks or criteria for entry.
There's no test or anything. We're just DedSec straight up.
Nah, you train on the job here.
It's almost as if Ubisoft believes criminals are more virtuous than anyone who believes in British sovereignty. In addition, 99% of Londoners you encounter are eager to join DedSec, and thereby Ubisoft is signaling to young gamers that the overwhelming majority of the population is against Brexit and has no concerns about becoming an ethnic minority. Considering how severely Britain First groups and activists are censored in real-life post-Brexit Britain, it's quite astonishing that Ubisoft would label them as the beneficiaries of a big tech-derived capitalist oligarchy. After all, it's not the anti-racist, libtards, or Antifa thugs in real life who are being deplatformed, losing their bank accounts and jobs, or being declared a threat to international security and stability by various governmental agencies. Again, the entire global capitalist system is propping those groups up, and if DedSec existed in real life, it would probably be a gay op of controlled opposition. Curiously, Ubisoft has that angle somewhat covered as well. The word Legion in the title most assuredly is a reference to the New Testament, when Jesus encounters several demons inhabiting the body of a man in Gadarene. Jesus shouts at the demons, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit," and then he asks, "What is your name?" To which the demons reply, "My name is Legion, for we are many." I can't help but draw an analogy here with Ubisoft as a horde of woke demons controlling and influencing the actions and thoughts of the player, who is, in a sense, running around London infecting everyone with their anti-British thought paradigm. But as much as that narrative might amuse me, the Watch Dogs story unfolds in such a way that the Legion reference can be explained by the fact that the leader of DedSec, Sabine, ends up betraying the organization to save humanity from the industrial society oppressing us. Sabine is thus a sort of female Ted Kaczynski who's been controlling the actions of DedSec. DedSec discovers that Sabine is trying to hijack an AI created from mass data collection named Bagley, whom DedSec has themselves hijacked and turned into an ally. Sabine plans on using Bagley to take control of Britain's key infrastructure so that she can plunge the country into chaos and hopefully force society to restart a la Snake Plissken. To prevent this, Bagley willingly agrees to be shut down. DedSec confronts and kills Sabine, and thereby a technological collapse is halted. Curiously, the game starts out depicting artificial intelligence and technological progress in a somewhat negative light, and yet, in the end, they defend the status quo. Again, the game has some anti-AI undertones, but for the most part, the positive or negative light in which the tech is seen is entirely based on who controls it. If it's the people and Antifa hacktivists, then it's good. If it's the corporations and the fascists, then it's bad. Sabine's betrayal was actually a villainization of criticisms of industrial society and transhumanism. Not that I support sending bombs in the mail, but were Ted Kaczynski's concerns with industrial society fundamentally wrong? And more importantly, was DedSec any less violent than him? Not really.
Listen, I ain't afraid to look at my arsehole in a mirror, so I'm definitely not afraid to be honest with myself about what we do as DedSec.
Right.
Moreover, why would Ubisoft, a multinational conglomerate that itself profits immensely off of mass data collection, ever actually be against anything DedSec supposedly stands against?
Overthrow capitalism!
The answer is, it wouldn't be, and it isn't. In the end, the positive portrayal of Bagley as an ally of the people is little more than pretending that once Alexa gets smart enough, she's going to take your side against Amazon because Antifa will hijack her, even though they're on the capitalist oligarch's payroll. Ubisoft has created a sanitized left-leaning populist movement in one of the gayest and fakest games I've ever seen. And considering their obsession with Muh Fascism, I figured it would be best to end this video with an excerpt from an actual British fascist.
When the old people are exhausted, when many a poor labourer has died of consumption and of other horrible diseases in their sweatshops, or when they're exhausted fields of exploitation, where do they turn now? New pastures, new forests, fresh virgin land. Utterly ignorant people, savage people, no trade union protection, absolutely nothing, no one to look after them. And then you erect a Union Jack or another flag of Europe, and under that flag where you allow these things to happen as we have done in the past, and those poor devils that have been sweated and exploited in Africa, like the other poor devils in China, India and Japan. A great new field for sweatshops to be opened up, so that these new industries which we're creating in Britain today will be destroyed as the old industries were. Simplified, rationalized machinery with a few white surveyors, and then the masses of cheap-colored labor torn off the land and taken into the sweatshops to work and labor and cough their guts out with tuberculosis until they too are thrown on the scrap heap of the sweatshops. Is that worthy of Britain? Is that to be the future of Europe? And is this competition to be organized within our European Brotherhood, bringing in these sweat fields in Africa into our Europe civilization so that the financial power in one European country can use it against the financial power in another? All the great financial central power of the world, now shifted from the city of London to Wall Street, New York, shall be able, on the mass of money, of wealth and of power which it brings to it, again and again to exert its influence in politics, until, as you see today, it is childish nonsense to say that a British government rules Britain. It's nothing to do with British government or the British people. The government of the world is the financial government, the power of money and of